The chains of habit are too light to be felt until they are too heavy to be broken. Welcome back to Blurred Summits. Today on Wildcard Wednesday, we are going to be talking about building positive habits and being self-aware enough to acknowledge them before they become too hard to break. So do you guys think that we make any actual decisions?
I think we do. We make a lot of like the big ticket decisions, I think for sure. But it's some of like the smaller, more subtle things that kind of slip underneath the rug are things that we don't have too much control over. Kind of like the
Mm,
subconscious side of things. Anything on that side we don't have control over. But
yeah,
anything that's visible to us, 100% we have control and can make decisions on those things.
yeah,
Not
I mean, whatever we have control of, right? Like, I can choose to wake up or not wake up on time. Like, I can choose to sleep in. But more big picture stuff, like obviously, like I can't control how the weather's gonna like affect my commute or whatever. And so I think if 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 you're just aware of what you can control, then it becomes a lot easier to be more self-aware.
yeah. I think the vast majority of the decisions that we make, they're rooted in some sort of subconscious. You know what I'm saying? Like we think that we're making these decisions, but like subconsciously there's something else that's affecting us. You know what I'm saying?
but
Like, go
is
ahead.
it our actions that make decisions for us? Like, is it how our habits are? Do our habits are there make the decisions for us? That's the other thing you have to ask.
Yeah,
Is like
exactly.
through
Like
performing actions.
subconsciously
Yeah,
those habits affect our actions, which
but I
then
think
affect
those
our
are,
decisions.
but that's you actually making them because you're the one that have these habits, right? So
Right.
if you look down the line, sure you might not be directly making the decisions, but due to your actions and stuff, habits, they make those decisions. So it's kind of an indirect way where everything basically falls back on you and you have control over, I guess, anything that does impact you. As I mean, granted, again, other things in the weather, other people's actions, things like that. Anything that is in your realm, you do have control over.
I mean, one thing that's super crazy is like, and I remember I was talking to Abdul about this before, like at a different time, but like basically, like if there's like a route that you're super familiar with, like when you're driving, like from home to work, for example, you actually like, I don't know what it is, but like you don't have to be paying full attention to when you're driving. Like you just sometimes I'll just be like thinking my thoughts and I'll just
I
end up
just
like
blank out, bro. I'll blank
yeah,
Yeah, I
out.
zone
Yeah,
yeah,
out.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm aware like when it's a red light and like I'm doing like all the rules and everything,
I'm
right? Like
not,
I'm
man. I swear sometimes I'm like, did I run that red light? I have no idea.
yeah,
It
but
always seems to
like
be Sarsi. Sarsi's the one, bro. Sarsi. I just zone out on
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
yeah,
I
because you
swear.
just like cruise down it, right? And it's like, hold up, like how did I even get here? But like I think just things that are so routine, your brain just goes into autopilot and
Mm.
right.
So the question is, how often is our brain on autopilot when we think that it's not? Like, is our brain on autopilot more than we think it is? You know what I'm saying? Like, is it doing all that stuff? Is it driving the car for us in the background a lot of the time? And we think, I'm out here making all these decisions, but then it's not actually me. It's, my brain's kind of tricking me to believing that I'm the one in control, right? Like, who's in the driver's seat?
I think with that side of
It's
things, it's
not
any
me.
time that you're not actively putting in the intent for anything, right? Like the driving, the losing conscious, your intent is your thinking, right? So your brain's doing the thinking, so something else takes over. So it's anytime that you're not actively putting your mind to something, then your subconscious is making those decisions, right? Like things like even breathing. You're not thinking about that stuff. Sorry to anyone who's now just thinking, let's breathe. But your breathing is the thing you're not thinking about. So your subconscious is doing that for you. Same with blinking, same with any of these kind of things, right? And
Yeah.
as soon as you start thinking about it, who's the one making those decisions now? Your active conscious.
Mm. This is have you ever seen those? One of the things that's super interesting to me is the optical illusions. You know how sometimes they have those optical illusions where they'll show a bunch of different lines and they'll be like, which line's the longest line? And then you'll be like, okay, this one's obviously the longest one. But they're like, haha, no, they're all the same length, right? And they show you, oh yeah, they are actually all the same length. But even after you know it's an optical illusion, if they put it back how it used to be, you can't help but see that one line is longer. You know what I'm saying? It's like, regardless of how much I try to believe that they're the same length, they're different lengths. And that always kind of blew my mind. It's like, wait, even if I'm trying to tell myself they're the same length, I'm being deceived. You know what I'm saying? I'm being told, I know it's a lie. I know it's an actual lie in front of my face, but I'm sticking with it. And I almost think that's kind of what this quote's talking about, where it's like these, sometimes there's some subconscious habits that we have, and it takes a lot of effort to do the opposite or to break those habits, because even when we identify them, they're so rooted in our subconscious. Like, it's our brain, it's just doing all the work, right? And
Yeah.
it takes like a overwhelming amount of willpower to overcome it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's like it's something. I'm trying to think of that with the way that you had that. I'm blanking here. But yeah,
It's
that's
like a
some.
weird thing to think about.
Yeah, it's
Let's
like as soon as I
let's
think about it, it puts my mind in like this pretzel. I was like, wait, that does this. What does what? I confused myself trying to think about how to even explain it there. I was like, wait, hold up. Wait a
Yeah,
Honestly,
yeah.
minute.
I think another quote this reminds me of is habits are like a tree, and if they stay long, if you let them go long enough, then they'll get rooted into the ground, right?
Yeah.
And so they'll be super hard to uproot. And that can go for good habits and bad habits. Like you could have a good habit of, reading before you go to sleep or whatever, right? Or you could be on your phone before you go to sleep and then barely get any sleep because of that, right? And the longer you let it go on, the more it'll get rooted, right? And it's just like this quote where it's like the chains of habit are too light to be felt when they until they are too heavy to be broken, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like the chains are just like those roots, and you got to pull them out before they get too rooted.
Yeah.
When they get so long, then it takes you a whole week, whole month to get them all to break down that tree, get that out uprooted, and fix those habits, right?
What have your
So,
guys' experiences been with habits, right?
well, as most people, I guess I'm a creature of habit, like most people. Like I'll easily fall into a routine, fall into consistency. That's what I'm always kind of, I guess, subconsciously looking for. I've realized. So unless I'm consciously looking at my habits and looking for the bad habits, I'm not going to really notice it, which is bad. So I need to be actively searching for those bad habits to even have any chance of breaking them. And then it's again weeks, months, however long it takes of consciously looking at those bad habits to chop them down, break them out, forget about them.
Yeah.
It's challenging, right? Like trying to break any habits or form new ones is always challenging because you always want to go back to what you know. And until you can create those new habits to be something that you know, it's going to be a challenge, right?
Something
It's
I
It's
so
like
always realized with my own habits is that I'm like, there were always triggers. Like, for a certain habit, there was always like a trigger for the habit. Like, if I was in a certain environment, then I would just do the habit. You know what I'm saying? So like, with getting food, for example, which is still a very bad habit of mine. Just like spend way too much money on food. Whenever I would be in an environment where the opportunity was presented to me, or if I was like driving by a fast food place, or something kind of popped up and it like triggered that habit, then that made it so much harder to avoid it. But when I'm in quarantine right now and I'm not really presented with those things as much, maybe here or there I'll get a notification from like Skip the Dishes or like DoorDash or whatever. Um, but unless I get those triggers, I don't feel any urge for it, right? So I think that has a big role to play with habits. It's not just that there are these things that are ingrained within us and we can't help them, but there's like triggers that keep us hooked.
so are you saying that you have to get rid of the triggers to fix a
Yeah,
habit?
yeah. I'm saying like, because sometimes I don't even try to fix the habit in like particular, but if I just avoid the trigger, or if I attach some different meaning to it, and like I kind of just push the trigger to the side, not thinking about the habit, then as long as I'm not presented with that trigger, I can sort of use that as a pathway to breaking the habit, you know?
So,
The one
Yeah.
issue is like, I guess if that trigger ever came up again, then I'm screwed. But,
Like I think the biggest thing is like when you're dealing with like habits that have been there for a long time, like the first thing you got to do is like identify the triggers. Like you're not gonna fix the habit unless you know what causes it, right? And
mm,
so with whatever that may be, you need to figure out like what environment is it, or what time of day, or maybe it's a certain type of person that you're around, or what. So you kind of need to figure those things out and know them, right? Because first you need to know where the habit is, and then you can go from there.
but isn't
yeah,
that that's the most challenging part of it, right?
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
figuring out what the trigger are, because there could be tons of different things. It could be something super subtle, like it could be something that you'd never think of that'll be the trigger for one of these habits, right? So I guess
yeah.
it's figuring out what a bad habit is, then figuring out what the trigger is for that habit, and then getting rid of that trigger. It's a long process, but once you get there, I guess then you have the opportunity to knock out that bad habit.
I think Imad was really on to like something there with the environment too. I think the environment is super important. Like, imagine you're a smoker and all your friends are smokers. That's going to be incredibly hard to stop smoking just because of, the social status that's attached to it and all your friends are doing it. But if you had a friend group of people who didn't smoke, then that urge wouldn't be there. You wouldn't be surrounded in an environment, those triggers wouldn't be there. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, the environment has so much more to do with our habits than ourselves, almost, I would say.
Yeah, and then that's back to, I guess, the thing that we talked about at the end of the last podcast with making hard decisions.
Mm,
Sometimes you have to make those hard decisions to cut out some of those kind of, I guess you could say, toxic environments, which are causing some of these bad habits. Like with the smoking thing, you have to cut out the habit or the environment of the people, the friends that you're with.
yeah,
If you're trying to get rid, if you like you seriously want to stop smoking, you almost have to cut those people out so then you can stop
yeah.
smoking,
But
which
that's
is a tough
difficult.
decision, which is a really
Yeah,
tough thing to do.
I think we
that's
should
so hard.
differentiate. I think we should differentiate from like addiction and habits, because those are like two different beasts.
But it's the same. Wait, are they different? How are they
I
different?
I feel like they're different in intensity. Like an addiction is a lot more intense of a routine than a habit. Like an addiction, and like addiction also has like the negative connotation behind it.
Mm,
But like I think like addictions are a lot more psychological, because like you're hooked onto that what's the hormone called?
I don't know. It's
Dopamine, like the
dopamine,
dopamine.
yeah.
Yeah, you're hooked onto that dopamine release, right?
Yeah.
And I think like you need to rework that. So like with smoking, for example, like sure, smoking's a bad habit, but it's also an addiction, and like that kind of
Mhm.
you need to. But like a bad habit, like always sleeping in late, right?
Yeah.
That's not the same thing as addiction. So I
Oh
think
my god, bro. Are you sure? No. Dude, you want to know something funny about sleeping in late? I literally found my trigger for sleeping in late was the location of my phone. Like,
yeah,
I'm
hundred
not even
percent.
kidding you. Like,
Really?
I realized I have a plug in the corner of my room. And if I plugged my phone into that plug to charge it overnight and my phone was on the ground right beside that plug and that's where my alarm was, then I would wake up consistently without a doubt. But if my phone was plugged into any other wall, like any other socket in the wall, I would sleep in. I would sleep in. I would not even wake up to the alarm, right? And it was the weirdest thing. It had to be in that one place. So it was almost like the other plugs were like a trigger for it. It was a weird thing. I don't even know why it psychologically happened. Maybe it was just like
But
the
you think
repetition of, I don't know.
you think that's like a self fulfilling prophecy though? Like,
Probably, bro, probably. I swear, because sometimes like I think as I'm going to bed the night before, it's like a almost negative thought in my head when I plug it into another wall socket, and it's like I don't have the intention. Like, I set the alarm to wake up, but my intention isn't there to wake up. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
I feel like you're just rooting your intention, like
Yeah,
when you
yeah,
put
yeah.
it there.
Like I'll be like, okay, I set my alarm to wake up early, And
But
so I
like,
did
But you
my
don't want to
part,
wake up early.
but
You
I
have no
don't
intention
want to
to.
wake up.
but
I
like,
don't
let's
have
be
any
real.
intention.
Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah.
right? So like that's like something that I found out about myself. It was like that for waking up. It was like that and touching my bed after the initial wake up. Like every time I would always tell myself, like I would wake up and I would tell myself, okay, I'm just going to sit on my bed for like 5 minutes. And I would fall back asleep.
Well,
And
especially if you're
every
doing it at like
day,
5 a.m., 4:30, right? You're
yeah,
screwed at that point.
no, but the thing is, I would tell myself the same lie every day. Every day. Like, I would be like, okay, yesterday you said you were going to be there for 5 minutes and you ended up sleeping in for an hour and a half. Today it's going to be different. You know what I'm saying? And I said that same lie to myself like 15 times in a row. And
Like,
every
did this
time I fully believed that like I was going to wake up. And then
was
I
this always super
eventually,
early, or was this like the different
it,
days? Was this always
it
the
did not
4:30
matter.
shit, or
It
was this
did not
like there's gonna
matter.
be
It
like
did not matter.
8:30 in the morning? You're just like, I'm gonna do another 5 minutes.
Whenever I could wake up at 10 in the morning, and if I because my phone, it's at the other end of the room on the ground,
Yeah.
so I have to get up out of my bed to turn it off. So I would turn it off and I would be like, okay, I'm gonna go back. Like I'll just sit, like whether I'm sitting on my bed on my phone or whatever, I'll just like let me just sit down for 5 minutes, just you know gather my breath and wake my body up a little bit. And every time I would do that, I would end up asleep for at least another hour and a half. It did not matter when I woke up. And that was like a major trigger for me. And I realized, like, okay, stop telling yourself this lie, you idiot. Right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you've told yourself the same lie and believed it for 15 times in a row. Like, how, like, that's ridiculous. You know what
Well,
I'm
you're
saying?
you're tricking yourself into sleeping in. That's what that is. You're saying,
Yeah.
hey, I'm gonna pretend like I'm gonna wake up in 5 minutes, but I full well know there's no
And I
chance of me doing
believed
that.
it, bro. I believed that trick. That's the thing.
It's
It's like I was
insane how
tricking
easy you are
myself,
to trick
and my
yourself.
and my brain like believed it. It was so crazy.
It's insane. Yeah, you can just trick your mind so easily, which is
Yeah.
funny. And you still fall for it. Like, I mean, any of that stuff. Yeah, you just fall for anything you want to. If you want yourself to believe something, you always will, right?
Mm,
Dude,
yeah.
a friend of mine told me, Hadar,
Yep.
yeah, dude, he was like, he saw in his TED talk, but basically he was saying that if you can count down yourself waking out of bed, you're a lot more likely to get out of bed. And it's like you can do like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, because then you're like kind of rooting that in, and like you're readying yourself for that moment. And like
So
in
Mm-hmm.
the
then
TED
on
talk,
one you have to get up out of bed.
yeah, and like in
Oh.
like one they'd be like lift off or whatever, like like a rocket or whatever. But like you can do whatever you want. But like if you can do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, like it's not just gonna be like you wake up and you're like, oh my god, I need to get up. You gotta like tell yourself, okay, I'm gonna do this countdown. At the end of this
Mm,
countdown, I'm actually gonna get up.
You count down, and then it's
yeah.
like, oh damn, okay, now I gotta get out of bed. Let's do this.
It's
Yeah,
like
And
the
then you
second
just
the
you
second you
train
hit one,
yourself.
you just need to get up out of bed. It's like,
yeah,
you know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? It's literally like takeoff, right?
yeah, literally.
That's interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we've been
What?
focused on about the bad habits. So do you want to talk about kind of how we found ways to create good habits? Because there's always the
Yeah.
two sides. Like there's one thing to break a habit, but then there's another thing to create a good one at the same time.
Mm. Yeah, something I saw in The Power of Habits, like this book, is they were talking about it's so much harder to just break bad habits straight
Oh, I,
up,
I thought I
right?
had that book behind me. I was gonna show it.
Oh. Is that it takes a ton of willpower to just flat out break a bad habit, but it's a lot easier to replace a bad habit with a good habit, right? So to let's say I have a bad habit of eating out, and I identify the triggers that I have associated with that. But if I flip the narrative and I take those triggers and associate them with a good habit, so every time I get those triggers, instead of doing the bad habit, instead I do the good habit, then
Like
not
eating food you
only,
cooked for yourself that you have in the backseat of your
yeah,
car or
yeah,
something.
yeah, or just like some random good habit, like who knows, like if you if every time if I was triggered to like eat food, it didn't even have to be food related, like get on the ground and do 10 push-ups, like you know what I'm saying, just some random good habit, something to change the narrative
Something
of
that
what that
benefits
bad
you
habit
from
means.
that trigger. Change I guess it's
Exactly.
changing your association with the trigger more than anything. That's what
Exactly.
that comes down to.
Right, so you're not even focused about eliminating a bad habit, you're just focused about replacing what the trigger has to do, with the habit. Replace the
Hmm.
narrative of the trigger. Get yourself to do something positive. I think that sounded really amazing. I think that's a really good way to do it.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way before, but that does make a lot of sense. Like, because yeah, we're talking about the triggers, and if you can just change the association, your mental association, you can, instead of going from negative to neutral, you can go from negative to like a giant positive,
Yeah.
which I think is, you could change yourself so quickly by doing that.
And
Saying
it's
just, and
harder, it's easier on the willpower too, because like
yeah,
imagine you're just trying to break a bad habit. Like you really gotta force your mind to just be like,
force
oh my
yourself
God,
to
this
not do something instead of
mm,
you're, because you're what the trigger, like, okay, time to do something. They just change what that thing to do is. So you're like, okay, like the push up thing. Oh, I'm really craving that fast food since I just drove by it. Okay, as soon as I stop, park, push ups, there we go. Good job. Now I'm getting fit, doing some chest, doing some exercise, keeping myself healthy. Just
yeah. Because
changing the
it's like
narrative,
the
I guess, is
initial
the big thing.
thought. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Because usually with habits, it's like we don't really like doing them after a while. Right? Like we want to change, but it's like when you have that trigger and that initial thought, you start doing the habit, and then once you start doing the habit, you're like, okay, you know what? I'm already here, so might as well buy the food,
Yeah. Well,
right?
I think this is going back. Like, I think I took a psych class, I guess now it's 2 years ago, where you're talking, I think that's like positive affirmation type stuff, where it's like, because with the food thing, it's like, oh, thought, oh, there's the trigger, like the thing. And then your reward of thinking of that thing is getting the thing. So I guess with the
Mm-hmm.
fast food, it's like, oh, driving past a fast food place, mine goes fast food place, reward, I eat fast food. So now
Mm.
you drive past the fast food place, you're like, oh, there's a fast food place, I'm craving it. Let's do some push-ups. That is your reward for thinking of that thing. I guess in reward in air quotes, I guess, depending on if you consider that a punishment doing push-ups or whatnot. But doing it
Yeah.
that way, you can then say trigger, reward. You just change the reward at the end of things to something that helps you instead of what you're trying to avoid, which is then eating that junk food, right?
And it's always like the habit happened right after the trigger. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's
But
how it is,
like,
right? It's just when it's quick, 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 like the dog in the bell.
yeah.
Bell food, bell treat, bell whatever, right?
And if I just let that trigger pass for, a minute or two, then I realized I didn't even want it. Like with food, for example, I wasn't even hungry. I wasn't
Yeah.
hungry, right? I did not want food. But once that trigger happens, it's just like a force of habit.
Yeah, it's that
You just
mental
go do
tick,
it.
right? It's like there, bam,
Exactly.
food.
Even with sleep, I had slept a good amount for the night before, right? I had 8 hours of sleep or whatever, 7 hours of sleep. I was good to go, right?
Mhm.
And it was just like a trigger that forced me to do that extra little bit. Now,
Yeah, I
enough
don't
about
know.
me looking
It's
so terrible. What are some bad habits you guys have? And making me spew out all my bad stuff.
well, mine is the sleeping in wasn't an issue. I was, I guess, inconsistent with a lot of the things with the gym. So that was one, because yeah, Abdul and I would go to the gym, try to go 5:30, 6:30, 5 days a week in the morning. And I was, I guess, probably only maybe 60, 80% of the time I'd go. And a lot of that was, yeah, the fact that I wasn't able to get out of bed, get my feet up off of that. So that was a terrible habit for me. Sleep always, I guess, at least for university people, university guys, it's a pretty big bad habit, because we all know we need to get out of bed to go do, even say you sleep in a bit later, wake up for your 8 a.m. class. People somehow still find a way to sleep through that 8 a.m. class because it's too early, all this other stuff.
Yeah, I
So trying to
remember.
break that.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
I remember for those 8 a.m. classes, bro. I'd either be sleeping or I'd be on the highway, bro, trying to get to class. Like,
Well, it's funny though how, like, at least for me, a couple years changed. Like, 8 a.m. classes first year uni, such a struggle, such an annoying
yeah, yeah,
thing.
100%.
And then this year, like, because I was waking up now, or trying to at the very least wake up for 5 a.m., 4:30, whatever, to go to the gym. So now my sleeping in is 7 a.m., 7:30. Where even now, like today, I didn't even set an alarm and I was up at 7:30, even though I was up to like what 1 a.m. or whatever. So it's like,
Mm,
even with those bad habits, I found you limit them down. So at the very worst, if you have the bad habits, you can find a way where they are less impactful in the negative way. Like for me, it's like shifting my whole morning earlier by, I guess, 2 hours, 3 hours. So now me waking up at 7:30 is like what I used to be waking up at, say, 10:30, sleeping in that way. So
yeah.
it's like, I don't know,
Yeah.
at least,
It's like even if you fail, it's
still,
better than
yeah.
what it used to be, right?
So yeah, so that's like, I guess, back to the thing of me challenging myself, like the challenge of waking up super early and going to the gym every morning. That has created, even me failing, I'm still successful in comparison to where I was before, I guess is the way to look at that. So it's kind of making the best out of a bad situation at that. I mean, ideally I'd be waking up at 4:30 every morning, not needing to worry about sleeping in, all that side of things. But what can you do? Sometimes your bad habits fall in. And then when those bad habits do show up, just doing something to reduce them, I found is kind of the important thing, at least for
Yeah.
me. Like that, it just make the impact. Like even if I wake up at 7:30, and I guess now with Zoom, if I had a class at 8 a.m., I'd be up for it. Like I wouldn't miss it, even if I slept through everything 3 hours longer than I would have wanted to. I'm still up, ready to go. 7:30, when even that's early for a lot of people these days. So then that I'm happy with. So it's kind of a win lose situation, right? Where sure I didn't wake up when I wanted to, but I'm still up, or I'm above the curve when it comes to waking up at 7:30 or whatever it is.
Yeah. I think you also can't be too hard on yourself, right? Like with bad habits is that they are super difficult to change, but it becomes very discouraging if all you're thinking about is like, okay, I suck, right? Like, oh, I'm, you know what I'm saying? Like, I can't ever change this habit and I'm never going to be able to fix it and all this kind of stuff that we tell ourselves all the time, right? Is you can't take yourself too seriously. Like, yeah, you're going to not do well on your bad habits. Like, people have been trying to wake up early all their entire lives, you know, and
Yeah.
now you want yourself to change in the matter of like a month. It's like we can't be too hard on ourselves,
Yeah, you
right?
got to look at things from like the upside, right? Like with that one, like if there's times where I'd be like, damn, I slept in again, brutal. But then it's like, wait, I used to be, when I slept in, it would be, yeah, like I said, back to like the 10:30, whatever. Look at that improvement. Me sleeping in from 10:30 is now 7:30.
Yeah.
Therefore, and even at that point, you're not missing anything out of your day, right? So it's like showing how important it is to challenge yourself, push yourself a bit, to even
And you
change
made
just
a
the
ton of
slightest bit.
progress,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? Like that's a ton. 3 hours is a ton of progress. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's definitely you got to take the ups with the downs, right? Like it's not always gonna be up, 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 right?
Yeah, you almost, yeah, you
Yeah.
just got to look for those little wins, or even if you don't succeed, you look back and be like, where was I before? Am I above where I was before? Yes, there you go. You're making progress, right?
Yeah.
Dude,
And
as
this
long as
shows,
like every day you can like say like before you go to sleep you can say like, okay, I'm proud of this one thing that I did. That's progress, man. You gotta just move forward and like not everything's gonna go right, but as long as you can say, as long as you can genuinely tell yourself that, look, we made progress today, then I think you can go to bed feeling good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think
And even if you didn't make progress, man, even if like you had a really
Like
trash day,
I'm
right?
saying,
that's
like
the
you
intent.
know,
Intent is there.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
yeah,
I'm saying, yeah. As long as the intent's there, like you put in the effort, like you did
Yeah.
at least something. Like it
Yeah,
could
yeah,
have been
yeah.
like 30 minutes of work,
yeah.
but it was better than like being on your phone all day or like right.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
Well, I think this is a future topic. I guess this kind of fits in with is like focusing a lot on the journey more so than the destination. Because like
Yeah.
we'll go back to the sleep example. The destination is waking up at 4:30 every morning, no problem whatsoever. But the journey is slowly making myself, I guess, in my terms, fail, not meet the goal, work less bad and less bad earlier and earlier, right? So the journey is me slowly changing my sleep schedule from, I guess we'll say 7:30, 10:30 wake up, late sleep in, to shifting it to 3 hours earlier or whatever it is. That's the journey. And then as you keep forming that habit, it'll inevitably become 4:30 is just this new standard, right? No challenge whatsoever. I mean, probably a bit minor challenge, but it'll just definitely reduce the difficulty of doing that. And just being aware of that journey, I think, and enjoying it, understanding, okay, I'm going to push myself till I can get to this point is important. So then you kind of know that you're not failing, but you're growing as a person, kind of developing
Yeah.
towards where you're trying to go to.
Yeah. Yeah, enjoying the journey. That's a really good point.
dude,
Because
and like yeah,
no,
you go.
I was just gonna say like if you get to the destination and you suffer the entire time along the way, it's just not as great,
It's
right?
not
Like
fulfilling.
it's not fulfilling because then you know what? After you achieve you're on to the next thing, right? It's only the high's only gonna last so long, and then it kind of sucks. That's like every single time I've ever tried to really like focus my sole thing, like after high school, getting into university, right? You're working super hard to do this thing and get these scholarships and get into university, do all these things. Once you get those things, you realize, okay, you know what, this feels pretty good. But a week later, I feel pretty much the same as I've always felt,
Mhm.
right?
The journey is what I think is the most important thing for anything, really, because once you get to the end, there's nothing past it, right? With the
Mm-hmm.
with a destination comes emptiness, I guess is the way to put it, I guess. But yeah, the
Yeah.
journey is what gives you the fulfillment and the pride in your success or in your whatever in your development and whatever it is.
It's ironic that we say that because, like, even to now, I'm always looking for the end goal. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
so
Well, yeah,
hard to
we're always
enjoy the
looking
journey,
for it.
right?
Yeah.
Even though, like, I know what's good for me, and what's good for me is to really enjoy the journey, it's like you can't help but be like, okay, oh, I just want to, like, I want to achieve it. I want to get it. I want to win. Even though I know in the past when I've won, it hasn't, impacted me too greatly. It hasn't been life changing.
Yeah.
That's still always what we're looking for, hey?
Well, yeah, the journey is what gives you purpose to what you're doing. That's what I've found. Is it like if you don't have a journey going on, you don't really have much of a purpose, right? You find yourself kind of lost, not really knowing what to do. But as soon as you give yourself kind of a challenge, a journey, something, a goal to achieve, you set yourself off on this journey, and then you have this purpose that you're trying to achieve, and that gives you kind of a sense of, I guess, security and confidence in what you're doing.
Yeah.
I think one way to keep that journey going is to rework your goals from like rather than having your goals be like end goals, they should more be like goals that you have to maintain. Like instead of
Mm,
saying I want to be able to dunk, you can say I want to be a really good basketball player. And
yeah.
so,
Mhm.
right? So if you can say like, oh, I want to be an all-rounded basketball player rather than I just want to be able to dunk, because as soon as you get that dunk, you're like, oh,
And that's
okay,
what's next.
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
So if you can have things that you can maintain, like in school, it's like, oh, I want to get this degree.
Mhm.
Um, but like, okay, but like if you start a business, like with like the things that you learned or whatever, then it's like something you have to maintain, right? So kind of reworking your goals to be things that you maintain rather than end goals. I think that kind of really helps with that with the journey.
So
Yeah.
non-definitive
Yeah, yeah.
goals, subjective. Because like if you become a really good chess or I guess basketball player, for me, it's I want to be like really good at chess. End goal, I guess. This is the definitive end goal is get a title, but it is like slowly work your way up. Good chess player, whatever it is, good chess player, great chess player. It's always what's the
There
word for it? It's
there isn't an
subjective. It's
end. There isn't
subjective.
an end, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it's subjectivity is such a big thing when it comes to goals, right? So if you set something like for me, I guess become a good chess player now will be different than what I say good chess player is in a year,
yeah.
right? Because as you improve, that goal just keeps shifting up and up and up and up with you. So so I guess eventually
And
you
that
can
really
catch up to
forces
that.
you to enjoy the process, bro. That
Yeah,
forces, because there is no end goal. So the only thing you can enjoy is the process, or else,
yeah,
you're just not enjoying anything.
Like you gotta
exactly.
celebrate. Like you gotta celebrate your milestones,
Of course,
right?
right?
Like
Like,
when you hit that first dunk or whatever, right? But go like then you since you've like framed it in your mind as like as like a an ongoing goal, then you know what to get into right
well,
after.
Yeah.
those small successes should drive you to keep going. I found it's like as long as you can have those small successes, yes, and then that you almost use that as a propeller to push you forward on your journey towards whatever you're going for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, anyways, we've gone on a bit of a tangent here. Um, we will call it a day for Wildcard Wednesday. Be sure to join us on Friday for Gratitude Friday, where we are going to be talking about 2020, a bit of a reflection over the year now that we've entered into the new year. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, across all social medias. You can listen to us on Spotify podcast, and be sure to share our podcast with anyone who you think might enjoy it as well.